Strategic thinking. I had a great friend. We went to Command and General Staff College together, or the Marines call it Command and Staff College. He was Norwegian. And he said, "You know, John, the problem with Americans?" And I said, "No, Uwe, but I'm sure you're going to tell me." And of course, he was happy to. He said, "You Americans have a problem with sitting back and thinking big." Wow. And he was right. And as I've gone on into business and working with executives, I find that that's exactly the case. We get senior executives who rightfully deserve their promotions and should be where they are. They know everything about their industry. They know their company backwards and forwards. But yet they've never been schooled on how to think strategically. Thinking strategically, you have to understand that your thoughts and your decisions don't affect just one department. They don't affect one segment of the organization. It affects the entire organization. That's by definition a strategic decision. Any decision that you make that affects the entire organization is strategic. So being able to think strategically means that you can sit back, one, and think big. What that means, first of all, is do you have a vision, a strategic vision of where the organization is going to be 18 months from now, 5 years from now? Now, I'll stop there for a second because I've heard people say, well, 5 years from now, oh my God, John, you're kidding me. Well, you know, that's right. I stop and say, no, I'm not kidding you. You do have to think out that far. And you can think out that far if you have the ability to think back. And there's a whole technique, there's a whole way of being able to project forward, which I won't bore you with all of that now, but in essence, and that's why there are senior executives who do the strategic thinking, because they have the experience in the industry, the time in the organization, that they can look back in time and see what affected that organization over the past 5 years specifically. What were the things that happened? And then they can look forward and say, okay, what do we see coming down the line? So that's the technique on how to sit back and think big. Now, it's far more involved, of course, but we can go into that at some other time. But the reality is most organizations don't realize that there's a technique for it. They just expect people to sit back and think big. Just give me some strategic thought, John. I've heard that and it makes me smile. But the reality is it has to come from you, the organization, and it comes from the executives.